Get started. So mostly the conversation today, and mostly what I wanted to talk about was just youth celebration. For the most part, that does mean capstones for the majority of our programs, but this also just applies to any time, you're trying to celebrate the youth in the program, because I think that's a really important component of any of the type of work that we do. So it's really important to talk about what are the ways to do that, what are the intentions. So the first thing that I would want to talk about are the goals associated with this. I think the four primary ones that you're going to have with capstones or any type of a celebration like that are one, obviously to celebrate, two to inspire, three to promote, and four to connect. I'm going to go through what each of these mean in a little more detail. So specifically with celebrating, I think this means a couple different things. One, the celebration is obviously of the youth, the work that they've done, what they've learned, how they've changed, their accomplishments, the impact that they've made in their community, and then more generally, the importance of youth and this program in their community. But it's going to be having that type of framing of this particular group of students in this program, in this community. But the biggest thing with, celebration and a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about and coming back to are making it specific and meaningful. I think that's really the key to what you're going to be trying to do for this, is that you have to make it specific and meaningful. And by that, I just mean it shouldn't be generic. It shouldn't feel inauthentic. And I think that's something that, is really important, especially for youth members of any type of program. But they're going to want to know that this isn't just put on for a show, that this is some type of, pleasantry or placating or something that they're just trying to, present the youth in the program to someone else. So it should be meaningful and should be specific, and you should show that this is specifically for you, and we're trying to make sure that this work that you've been doing is important, and we want to recognize that we've asked you to do a lot. And so that's something that is also worth noting, is that you should always thank the students for stepping up, thank any participants in any type of program like that for taking on this responsibility that is a lot for someone to bear and a lot for someone to do at such a young age, and acknowledging that is a really important aspect of it. And then also celebration. It's not just for the youth. Obviously, you should celebrate them, but it's also for the families and the friends of the participants so that they understand exactly how much their friend or their loved one has been doing over the past however many months they've been in this program. For local organizations, especially ones that have been applying for the funds or that were granted the funds, but also anyone that is associated with the program or any organizations that students had volunteering with, or even ones that had done something that they even just applied for an RFP. The majority of the time, they don't really recognize how much the youth in the program are doing. So it's really important to not just get the word out about this and celebrate the youth, but also help the local organizations understand what exactly they're celebrating. Then also that applies to other community stakeholders and then general change makers, because again, this type of program, it is across the country, and this is something that is seen by more than just the people that are individually in a community. So it's always really nice to understand that this is something that makes a larger impact than is just spoken within one room. So I think celebrating and thanking is always the first thing to come up with the goals for this. But then after that is going to be inspiring. I think hope and hard work works. I think is a really great way to say this. Basically, you're going to be inspiring the continued work by the youth. You want the juniors to really want to come back for the senior year and do whatever they're going to be doing for that senior year. And then you want the seniors to be understanding that this isn't just the end of their philanthropic career, that this is something that will happen for the rest of their lives. What does that look like? What's next for them, both in a general sense, but also philanthropically? What are they going up to, and how do they continue this type of work? And you want to inspire them to do this, even if it's not in their current community, if they're going somewhere else, if they're moving for work or for school or whatever it might be. This is a lens through which they can look at everything that they're doing. And how do you give them the tools and the confidence to take this and move into that next stage of their lives? Because that's really what this is about. Is it's not just, a self-contained program, but it is a launching point for the rest of the things that they're trying to do. Then the members in the community, that's another great group to be inspiring, because you want people to know, especially the people that are in the community, that the future is in good hands, that these people are the ones that are going to be taking over. They're going to be the ones that are the community leaders. These are the people that we're entrusting with the betterment of our community. And I think it's a really comforting feeling for people in the community that haven't necessarily seen that much of the youth in the program, to understand that this is something that they've put a lot of work, a lot of attention, a lot of time, and a lot of their passion into, so you can kind of feel inspired and hopeful for what is coming in the future of the community. An updated view of youth is also something that is important to be inspiring, because you really want to inspire this updated view of youth for people that don't really have this type of an understanding that youth are able to do all these types of things. I think that's something that these types of youth programs, youth philanthropy programs in general, obviously, but especially ones that really give the students a strong and robust sense of control over what is happening and empowers them to take the reins and really make the changes that they want to make in the community. I think it's important to understand that this is what they're able to do. A lot of people see youth as, when they are older, they'll be able to make decisions, or they're not understanding of the nuances of situations, or they're not capable of doing such mature work. And that's not true. It isn't true. It's never really been true, but it's important to understand that this is something that a lot of people hold as a perception of youth. And so, when you're celebrating and inspiring, that's what you should be doing, is inspiring them to feel good and interested in, okay, this is actually what these students who are 15, 16, 17, whatever they might be, are capable of doing, not just we'll wait for them to be older or, whatever we're waiting for. They're strong, they're capable, they're passionate, and they're very, very mature. The last thing is to inspire others across the country. Because again, this is part of a movement for good. This is something that is the feeling of, helping others, helping people in your community, of giving back, of giving your time, talents, treasure, attention, whatever it might be. This is something that we want to spread, not just be, again, self-contained within the students in the program, but you want them to take this and take this to the other people that they know, to take this approach to giving and how they look at others. This is what's important for them to understand and take with them for the rest of their lives. So again, it is inspiring others across the country that aren't even just in the program, but it's a ripple effect that will continue to affect people for a lot longer after this. After that is promoting. Promoting is a really interesting aspect of this because obviously it's going to feel like it should be just a celebration and celebrating the students that are in the program. But it really is important to promote the program to, potential future participants. A lot of the times that can be siblings or friends. The majority of the time, the way that we see students join the program, when we ask them, how did you hear about this? I'd say by far the vast majority is word of mouth and, people saying my older brother, my older sister, whoever it is, my neighbor down the street did this program, loved it, really wanted me to do it. So you're really talking to a lot of the people that are in the program, but also everyone around them as well, because you'll be recruiting, you'll be getting people involved in this. And that's a really important audience to be looking at when you're promoting this type of an event. You're going to be promoting the partners. So anyone that's helped behind the scenes, anyone that's helped provide food or catering or attention or locations, help with the fundraisers, any mentors that have given, their backing of their organization to help with whatever they might have had to do. But you really want to promote these partners and say this is, something we're really appreciative of, that they've been able to do all this work. And then promoting the local organizations goes kind of hand in hand with that, that you want to promote these people that you have funded, whether that's, going through and in depth having a discussion about this is what this organization does in the community. But they're doing incredible work and we really want to give them a shout out for this. It's great to give them the money, but I think the giving beyond the dollar is really impactful as well. So you want to give them attention, promote the organization, promote any types of things that they have coming up. If they need volunteers, if they need whatever it might be, you're able to give back a little bit more in this opportunity when you have more eyes on the program. And then lastly is just promoting the opportunities for collaboration and support, and any opportunities that might come with this program or what is associated with it. That's who you're going to be talking to as well. So the promotion aspect of this is kind of the marketing, and you really want to make sure that you're appropriately marketing the program and making sure that you're appropriately marketing the event itself so that people are going to be able to come, maybe that don't have a direct tie to the program. Maybe they don't have an initial understanding of what it is, but they might feel like they would want to attend. We've had people come with promoting or promote to news sources or local politicians or local influencers of whatever sort. And that's a really important piece, is to get people to promote for you as well. And I think that's something that's really important to do this program capstone style event, is to promote, not just celebrate. And it's probably the best time that you can promote because it's going to be showing everything that they've done, the impact, the students, everything's kind of very contained, that it's a really good aspect to do for that. And the last thing is connecting. I think connecting piece is important to contextualize the work that they're doing. So you're connecting the past, the present, and then the future, and you're allowing people to see how this relates to what's happened in the past, whether that's good or bad. You can say that this is a continuation of all the good that has been done within this community. This is a continuation of every year that we've had this program. Um, we've taken strides and new steps every single year and said that whatever they fundraised last year, for example, that we've tried to outdo that. And you can take it in that sense. You can also take it in a negative initial connotation and saying, maybe we haven't done that much up to this point, or this is the first time this is a program that exists in our area, but it would have been great if it existed before. It doesn't really matter how you frame it like that. It's more about this is where we are, however we got here, and this is what it's going to be, and this is what's to come. This is this initial cohort, this is the second, third, fifth, 15th initial group that has come through this and has made an impact. And every year we try to, change this. You can also talk about what is to come in terms of how the students after this program, what do they do? Do they come back? What is their impact? And you can always have people come back and talk about their experience thereafter. But connecting piece is really important to connect the past, the present, and the future in this type of event. And then obviously the confirming the connection between the youth, community, and philanthropy. Like I said earlier, you want to make sure the community understands the connection between youth and philanthropy, but you also want to make sure that the youth that are being celebrated understand that this isn't just a program itself, that the whole point of this program isn't just to say, we told you things for a little while and you did something self in a contained fashion. But you want to make sure that they understand this is a big deal. This is incredible work that you do, and it does make a difference, and it makes people's lives better. It doesn't just stop at the dollar either. It's the interactions that you've had. It's every single time you went to do a site visit. The people that you talk to, the adults, the amount of emails that I've gotten that have said, I loved whoever just came to my organization and talked to me, did an interview, did a site visit. They were incredibly professional. They handled themselves really well. It was really great to see the youth giving back. And starting at such a young age, that is such an important aspect of it that a lot of the youth don't really recognize how big of a deal that the work that they're doing is and how big of an impact they're having on people that they're not even intending to have an impact on. But you want to really confirm that connection for them, even if it needs to be explicit and well articulated. That's always a good thing to do. And then lastly, connecting the participants and associates of the program, so people like mentors, coordinators, anyone that's volunteered for the program, anyone that's helped with it, for stronger and longer lasting bonds. What that means is going to be different for every situation, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well, but things like making sure that you have a final conversation between mentors and students, whether that's a letter or an initial, having the mentors be the ones that introduce students, whatever it is, you want to do things that create these longer lasting connections beyond this final event. And this is probably the best way to do it because this is the last time that they'll have this type of an, feeling from the program. But you really want to make sure that you're creating those connections, creating networking connections, creating opportunities, and creating longer lasting bonds in general within the community, within the program, and within the students and participants of the program as well. And so those are the four biggest things for the goals that you're going to be looking at. And so in terms of logistics, that basically means the who, the what, and the how of this type of event or program, whatever it means. So if you're looking at the logistics of who, that means who you're going to invite, who's going to be attending. I always think that it's really good to start off with obviously the youth themselves, but their families. And it's probably pretty good chance that a lot of the people that are family members of the youth participants don't know that much about the work that they've been doing. They're not going to understand exactly how impressive or really how expansive and extensive the work that they've been doing is. And so it's going to be important to include them in this process and kind of speak to them when you're talking about how impressed you are about the students and how much work they've done and how much you're celebrating them. But then after that, it's going to be interesting to be able to invite more people as well. And like I said earlier, a lot of that comes down to promotion, but also making this event feel like a real event. It shouldn't feel like, giving a participation trophy to a bunch of kids. And you don't want the kids in the program and the youth in the program to feel like that's how they're seen. It shouldn't be demeaning in any way, even if it's not meant to be. You should treat this like a professional event and a professional celebration of really mature work. And so you can have people like obviously the nonprofit organizations that are going to be receiving the grants, but then also the fundraising partners, any board members of any organizations that any of the mentors or coordinators are a part of, or board members from the local community foundation that might be associated or hosting the program, different donors, anyone that you've invited to give money. You can also invite them to this type of event at the end of the year because a lot of them do want to see the impact that their money is making. That being said, that also might introduce them to the idea that, maybe they could give more money, maybe they could have a stronger role in the program. So invite them, and that's always good. And then you can expand it a little bit further. It's kind of a further tier of local political office holders, local media, newspapers, news channels, journals, prospective mentors, youth participants, alumni, previous grant speakers or grant seekers, even outside speakers. Really, anyone that you think is going to make an impact on this type of an event is going to be helpful, or anyone that would receive an impact from this event is going to be a really good idea as well, because you never know what's going to come out of it. We've had a lot of times that people say this person was invited to it, and then afterward, that person might come up and say, "Hey, I really love this. I never heard that much about it," or "I saw that there was, some type of a flyer outside for this. I was really interested to hear more, and I would love to be a mentor. I'd love to be involved. I'd love to give or donate or whatever it might be." And you also don't know the impact that some of these people that could be invited as, for example, speakers could have. I know some different affiliates have had specific speakers that have come in the past, and that could be the best part of the capstone event in the end. It's someone that has a really strong and deep appreciation for this type of work that can put the work into context, and contextualize it for the students to understand this is what this means beyond the walls they're in right now. So I think that's a good list of who to invite initially. Again, for a lot of these things I'm going to be mentioning, though, I would start smaller and grow with some decent sense of stability. It is not going to be helpful for you to overstretch, overreach. It just doesn't make it a good event, because it's just going to make you stressed as a person that's planning it and trying to make it happen. So it's definitely better to start with a stronger event, and then each year you can add on small amounts at a time. But yeah, it's not something that I would say invite everybody that you could ever think of in that first year if you're starting off fresh. But build off of that. And then once you see the first year how it goes, you can build off of that a little bit more and a little bit more, and kind of see how that progresses as well. Um, Next, for logistics, is kind of what you would need to have for the event itself. So the physical space, seating for, maybe up to 100, some sort of a front stage area. Obviously, this depends on who you're inviting, how big you expect it to be. It would be nice to have a nice physical space. Obviously, it's not going to be helpful to have something like, I don't know, an outdoor space that there's no seating, or just some general area to mingle. You want it to be feeling professional, in some type of capacity. But there's a lot of ways to do that, and a lot of themes that you could have for it. And that's going to really come up to you or the students that you ask to be able to help you for this type of an event. The technology is going to be important for you to understand. You don't necessarily need the technology to be able to host this type of event, but it does make a difference to understand, do you have it or not? Because then you can, tailor your approach a little bit more by maybe playing videos or photos. While you present, you could have microphones that help. Any of these types of things are important to at least identify, do I have this or do I not have this? So you can kind of plan, how does this need to be structured? If we don't have microphones, if we don't have technology, do we maybe need to be oriented slightly differently in this space? Maybe it's more of a circle. Maybe it's more of a loose and informal approach to it. Dress code is another thing. I think having a more formal attire adds to the program weight and the gravity of the program. Doesn't mean that it has to be black tie. Doesn't mean that it has to be particularly formal in any sense, but a slightly more business casual type of attire makes it feel that the youth understand that this is a real event. This isn't just, the type of thing that parents come to after work for no reason. It should be a celebration specifically of them and the work and the passion that they've had at this point. And then food, again, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. You don't have to worry about, make sure we're having catering and pizza and all this stuff that you might have during individual meetings, because that can be pretty costly and pretty difficult to manage. But I would say some type of a small thing, even finger food samplers. And it's always a good idea to look for partnerships to potentially cover these types of costs, or get an opportunity to, here's a really good event. If you'd like to promote your own food, your own, whatever you make, pastries, whatever it might be, this is also a really good opportunity to look for those types of partnerships and promote them in a way that benefits both parties. How to get people there. Again, this is just kind of like the reaching out, the invitations, RSVPs. Make sure you have different formats, the email, by mail itself, but then also through the youth. Make sure that the youth are telling their parents, making sure that they're inviting people that they know. If you need them to write these names down, if you need it to, treat it like an RSVP list, if you can send this out to whoever you want. But you want to make sure that you understand more or less how many people are going to be getting there. And it's also probably a good idea to send some of these out, at least to save the date, pretty far in advance, because you want to get as good of an idea as possible as early as possible. For the event programs, you want to have something like an agenda on it, the organization descriptions of the people that are being rewarded or people that are being associated with the program, and then bios for whoever's relating to the program as well as anyone that you want to have more descriptions for. Obviously, also include the youth, a list of the youth, a list of the mentors, a list of the coordinators, and also photos always go really well with event programs. But I'd say find some interesting ways to do some of these types of things. It doesn't just have to be dry. It doesn't have to be just a list of information on a piece of paper. But maybe the youth want to be a little more involved in the creative process of this. Or if you have people that are working, for example, in their senior year on the case for support, they might have done a little bit more with what it looks like and how do we promote this. Maybe you have some people that are doing social media during the year. What does that look like? How do they, decide that they would like to reach out or post different things or create different type of an attention or buzz around the event? So these are types of things that you can ask the youth. Again, I would say make sure you're asking these things well in advance, though, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but you want to have the youth plugging in specific things, not just blanket asking them larger questions. And then lastly, for the logistics of how to get people there, it comes down to also partnerships as well. For the event space, it's going to be really helpful. If you don't have to pay significant amounts of money or any money for the space that you're able to hosting this in, food and drinks, promotion for the organizations to cover the costs, whatever it might be. These are all good ways to get people to be there and then again, take advantage of these relationships that you might have had for example, if you had fundraisers and if you partnered with a local diner or a local business of some sort, that's also a really good place to put up flyers, to put up some type of an attention that you can have them directing more people to this event that's going to be celebrating their business. But again, it's going to be reaching out and finding different ways to do it, but being creative about it as well. For the itinerary, there's only a couple important points in this section. In the curriculum, there are certain things that it will say to do, to include. It's really helpful to just use the curriculum itself. Apart from that, though, I'd say one of the things you'll have to do is convey the context of the youth learnings. You don't want people just talking about something that doesn't really mean anything or that people in the audience don't have an understanding of what is going on. You can either directly deliver this information and just say, here's the things that we covered this year, here's the things that we talked about. Some affiliates I know have used the play from the junior session, the first junior session, that they come back, they have students redo it or reenact it, or sometimes they do it in a different way, but to kind of bring a full circle approach to that and bring it back to that first session after that first year. You can do a question and answer with the audience. You can have a small interaction and say, does anyone know what this question is, or what this answer is, or what this number is? Whatever it might be, just some type of an engagement that will show what the students have done, but you want the people in the audience to be thinking about this in advance. If you're going to be showing, this is how great of a work that we did, you can ask questions about this in advance of how much money do you think, we raised, something like that, that creates a little more engagement with the audience. Or you could also have a couple quick student speeches. I think it's going to be important to have a lot of different pieces of the general program done by the students. But if you want to have a couple students introduce the topics that they even covered and not talk too much about it, you can also do that. And I think that works really well. Along those lines, you should have youth in as many roles as possible during this thing. If you can have them do the MC role, absolutely do that. I think there's usually a couple of students that would love to be MCs, different presenters, different speakers on topics that they would like to talk about. You can always say, does anyone want to speak initially? And I think that's a really good list to start off with. Because if you do have, let's say 6 students that right away raise their hand and that's all the people that want to talk, then you're great. Then you don't have to worry about it too much. But if, they're a little bit uncertain or hesitant, you still will want youth to be involved, but then you can ask a little more specific questions and say, okay, well, if you're unsure about talking because you don't know what you're going to be talking about or what I'm actually asking, you can say, here's some good examples of topics if you'd like to talk about a specific topic or a specific experience that you had. And so junior year is going to be things like the grant making cycle, the consensus building, the root cause analysis, site interviews, and the visits that they did. Their junior year is kind of mostly those things, but then the senior year, they can do the fundraising campaigns that they led, the events that they held, the asks that they made, any type of community relationships that they're able to build or form, or looking back on their last 2 years, what has this meant to them? And so any of those types of things are really good examples of what could someone in this program be speaking about for their end of year capstone. But again, just to reiterate, you want to have them be the primary focus of this. You don't want to just be talking about youth and then on occasion say, let's stand up and give a round of applause for the youth in this cohort. It's going to be a lot more impressive to have them owning a lot of this. But the way to do that is a little more specific than just saying, what would you all like to do for this capstone event? And I'll get to that in a second as well. One of the things that I think is one of the biggest things that you could do for a capstone, and one of the most important things. It doesn't really make a difference if you're going to be having, what color the walls are, or how much food you have, or how loud things are, or how big things are. I think the biggest thing that is going to be meaningful from this event is making it memorable, making it meaningful, and making it specific with some type of a finesse to it. I think one of the best ways to do this, and this is something that I'll definitely implementing in the program that I'm working with more closely this year, but more personalized gifts, memorabilia, whatever that might be, it doesn't have to have a cost associated with it as well. So something like mentor letters or thank you notes, I think is a really great way to end the year. Having, specific mentors write for specific students. You can split them up and say, we have four mentors. You can all write for your individual cohorts. You can all pick students and do that. Or if you want, you can all, sign a small section of a letter for each individual student. Yeah, that might take a little bit of time, but realistically, for the amount of work and time dedicated that these students put into the program, I think it's a really good gesture to be able to show that all of us that were watching you grow really appreciated it. But I think the specificity is what's going to make it really meaningful. And saying, I loved watching you go from, maybe you started as a quiet student and saying, I loved watching you go from a quiet student to someone that really came out of their shell and really felt comfortable talking all the time and really loved their experience. Or I loved how you brought your experience from, parts of your life into this program. You added a lot of flavor and a lot of, context for some other students that may not have understood that into the program. Whatever it is, you want to have a very specific compliment and make it specific to every single person. Don't make it specific in a way that it just applies to all youth in general or all the people that were in your program, or just saying, I loved having you in our site visits, or it's really nice to get to know you. Try to avoid general things like that because that doesn't really mean anything, and someone that's going to read that is going to understand that this is just a nicety that you're going to be saying. But this more specific, more intentional, doesn't mean the longer, but the more specific you can be, the better. And that's really what's going to be creating this connection at the end of the program, making them feel like my mentor got to know me over these 2 years and genuinely means it when they say, I loved getting to know you better and see you blossom as a young adult, and really grow into your abilities as a person as you go into the next stage of your career. Whatever it might be, that's something that's going to be meaningful. That'll create a connection between the students and the mentors that can sustain, it can sustain itself and stand longer than just the program itself. There's a lot of mentors that I know that stay in contact with students in ways that maybe, they send book recommendations and say, hey, I was thinking about you when I read this book. I think you would love it. You should check it out. I think smaller gestures like that are way more meaningful than spending a lot of money on something in an end of year capstone event. So something like that, or even talking about something that you learned from the students and saying, when we started this year, we said that it should be a two-way street, that we should be learning from you just as much as you're learning from us, that, it's an exchange of respect. If you can show that and genuinely mean it at the end of the year, I would think that that's going to be, again, hugely memorable for the students, especially even if the students don't show how much that means to them. I promise you that that is really meaningful to them, and that is going to solidify their experience in this program, but then also their interest in continuing to do this because, if they try to do something that is a little bit scary for them and people don't congratulate them or even recognize that it was scary and difficult for them, it doesn't make them want to do it again. It doesn't make them want to stick with something that, again, even small parts of this, deciding on what organizations to grant money to, and then also what organizations to not grant money to, is a really difficult process. It's a really difficult decision to make, and it's a really difficult thing for someone to do, especially when they've never done this before. And these conversations that the students have, these are important things for them to talk about and to understand that people recognize the amount of work mentally and physically and emotionally that went into this program, that aren't just, oh yeah, you're young, you're learning, and it's fine. But like, I understand that you went out of your boundaries and you pushed yourself, and I really appreciate that. And that's going to be really meaningful. You can also have smaller or bigger things too that connect people to the program. Things like shirts. They could design a shirt in a few minutes in the last session. They can make it fun. I know a lot of times high school classes do this, where you'll see maybe an AP physics class that gets together at the end of the year and makes a shirt, and they'll use that for years and years to come. But that's going to be something that is memorable because they're so tightly knit and they're so close. And this is the last chapter of their high school career, oftentimes. So what does that mean for them, not just in closing this program out, but in closing their general approach to school and the way that they've seen it up to this point, and how to move forward from that. So shirts like that are a good idea, but again, that costs a little bit of money, and if you don't want to spend that, there's plenty of other ways to find something specific and memorable to connect the students to the program like that. Other things to make it memorable, photos, videos, include a lot of photos and videos from the year. So if you haven't been taking photos and videos up to this point, don't forget to do that up to this, the last few sessions that you have, the last half of the year, whatever you have left. Um, you want to make sure that you're getting a lot, because at the end of the year it becomes really difficult when you forgot to take photos the whole year, and it's a lot better when, yeah, maybe you forgot photos for the first half of the year, but now you can take a lot more photos and it's going to be a lot more meaningful for them. You can also have photos and videos taken in this capstone event, one for future promotion, for understanding of this is what the event looked like and this is how much we celebrated, but then also you can have smaller things like here's our background, and we can have photos being taken by the students or with the students and their parents or their friends, to celebrate this is my graduation from the youth philanthropy program. And you can also do like small reactions and interviews if you are able to get through to someone that does news or media in some sort of way, even if that's a small scale, even if it's the person that does local media, someone that does media at the school even. And if you have a gazette or something, a lot of schools do have some type of a local student newspaper, get them to be there. Have them ask a few students a couple questions at the end of the year and make it feel like they're asking genuine questions and make it feel like a genuine, important event. And again, these all come with different requirements, different levels of input and cost, but it's going to be important for them to understand that you're caring like this. But then also having the parents take this away, have it be memorable, and then asking people about their impressions afterward. For the 2 years, it can be a little bit different. You can either combine them into 1 year, and one capstone event at the end of the year, or you can do two different smaller celebrations. That just kind of comes down to your size of your cohorts, the amount of space that you have, the amount of time, the amount of people that you think will be coming to it. If you feel like you've had several years to grow both the junior and the senior program and you would like to have two individual events, that's totally fine. That will just come with a little more cost and time and investment for it. But sometimes it can definitely be better to have a larger event to be more specific rather than feeling you have to rush through it. Again, you don't necessarily have to do that, but either way works. But for the juniors, I'd say focus on things like the things that they did during the year that were a little bit more memorable, notable things like the checks that they give out for this last session. Make it a big deal. Have them have big checks, or if you don't want to get the big checks, you can get like sizable checks, something that is noticeable to be able to take photos with. You can have representations of the checks. You can have something that is just a large thing that is being handed over. But I have found big checks that you can get online that are just rolled up paper basically, but you can get them for, I don't know, $20, $30. You don't have to spend the money on a big cardboard significant check if it's just for the opportunity to take a photo with it. And the students would love that type of an opportunity too. But making sure that you're taking photos, making sure you're taking photos of them handing the checks over, just making a big deal out of what they're doing and the grants that they provided. You can have past participants and past recipients of the grants be able to come in and talk about their experience, and that's going to work really well. You can also have the promotion for the organizations that are being funded, and say, we're going to come in and let's talk a little bit about this one organization that received this funds or these funding. And here's what we did, here's what we funded them for, and here's a little more explanation of what their program is, how it works. And, like I mentioned earlier, this promotion for these local organizations is going to be really important for them, to get that attention beyond the dollar, but it makes it mean more, again, coming back to the memorability, but also the meaningfulness of this type of event. And then lastly, the senior. I know this looks like a little more for this section, but for the seniors, you want to really have. It's fun to have a big reveal of the total funds raised. You can have that be that the students are holding a large sign. We've had it where all the students have individual small piece of paper and they turn them around at different times to make it a reveal. You can have them, shift where they're standing to say, oh, this was the initial number and it's a lower number, and then they switch it around to show that this is actually the number that we got, which is significantly larger. Whatever it is, a big reveal of the funds is always a really fun moment for that senior section of the event. And then also having a program alumni talk about their experience since the program. This can be slightly different from the junior version of it. You can talk in the junior year and say, I went through the junior year and this is what you get to look forward to in the senior year. But for the seniors, you can have someone that says, I went to this program 4 years ago, if you do have something like that, or 2 years ago. This is my experience of it, or I did this when I was a lot older and I didn't get a chance to go through this type of program, and this is what I wish I would have done or wish I would have learned from this. And then also like next steps of philanthropic involvement. Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't meant to be the last time that they ever do this type of work. So what does that mean? Do you want someone that is a partner in your community that has, ability to bring people on for their, philanthropic giving or fundraising or things like that? Maybe you bring them in to talk and say, does anyone want to talk about this? You can have, different connections like that. We also do have different relationships with certain organizations that if you want to have the students talk about things like, a giving circle or an opportunity for them to pool their funds in the future or to stay connected and create some type of network internally, those are all good things. And also to reiterate, we will be having more stuff with alumni in all of the affiliate programs, be able to connect and return to the programs in the future. So that's always a good thing to make sure. And I'll be talking to everybody individually about this, but make sure you have the contact information of students that isn't associated with their school before they go through this program as well. And lastly, student highlighting. I think this is a really important part of the senior year is having mentors introduce their students one at a time, giving them each an additional couple seconds to stand up, to bow, to wave, whatever it is, and then maybe say what they're going to be doing that next year, what their career looks like, what their school is going to be, if they're working, whatever their next plans are, something that is specific to them and that people get to appreciate and just know a little bit more about who they are and who they're going to be in the future. And then you can also do some type of a student highlighting with small senior gifts. Again, this does not have to be expensive, doesn't have to be extravagant. We can do smaller things like, we've had programs do smaller engraved pens with, Youth Philanthropy Board or Youth Philanthropy Council, whatever it might be for your individual program. That's always a really nice gift to get, which is, not necessarily generic. It's engraved, but it is applicable to everyone. You can also have different versions of the small gifts that are intentionally individualized, and they don't have to, again, be expensive, but, every mentor should know their students relatively well. And so if you can say, I know that you love to write, so we got you a small little notebook, or you love whatever it is, we got you a mug with that thing on it. And something that is small and meaningful. Again, this also depends on your cohort size and what you have available to you fund wise and time wise, but something like that is going to be really helpful if you want to include a little gift like that. Other things could be like a certificate of completion. Congratulations, you have become a leader in philanthropy for our community. Something like that that recognizes the amount of work that they've done for this program. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, the thank you notes that address the 2 years of growth, the 2 years of work that they've put into this program, and then this journey of the student. So I really would recommend significantly some type of more personalized letter, whether it's a letter that is signed by everyone else, all the mentors, or individualized by having just one mentor write to their own individual team, whatever it might be. A note that is personalized is going to be really meaningful, and I think I could not recommend anything more than having something like that that adds that touch of personalization and meaning beyond the program itself. The last thing I wanted to say are just a couple tips. Keep it simple and pick your moments. Not everything has to be as eventful and as meaningful as possible. Not everything has to be big and memorable. It's not going to be memorable if everything is as big as possible. You don't have to worry about the cost and trying to do everything because there's so much to do in the capstone planning process that it's going to be really difficult to do that. So, especially if you haven't done it a lot of times before, and even if you have, keep it simple, but pick which moments you want to be memorable and particularly important and impactful. Things like the reveal for the funds. It's a great way to let's put our attention on this, or the handing over the checks. Let's make this special in some way, or the end of year highlighting of the students, whatever it is, let's make a video for showcasing each student and have them talk for 1 minute about their experience, whatever it is, whatever you wanted to do, just make it simple so that it's not too much work for you, but also it makes it more memorable when you do pick your moments like that. Also, in terms of meaningfulness, make it meaningful, but don't make it performative. The students are going to be able to see right through that. They don't feel impressed, or they're not going to feel like it means anything to anyone in the room if you're just being overly dramatic, or if you're making this performative of just like a show, or if you're putting them on show and on display for, here's our community that's here, and here's our cohorts, and you parade them around without actually giving them the space to talk about their experience or the ownership of something about the program. It shouldn't feel performative and it shouldn't feel fake or artificial like that. But they should feel valued. And personalization, like I mentioned earlier, does this very, very well. But whatever it is, whatever type of meaning you want to find, that's how I would do it. And then lastly, coming to the students with the structure and then having them fill in the gaps is going to be way more beneficial for you and a lot easier to accomplish your capstone or whatever celebration you're doing. You want them to be involved. Just don't give them a blank slate and say, what would you like the capstone to be? Or coming to them too early. Those are not things that are really going to make them grow anymore. The small logistics of it, don't ask them and say like, where do you want to host this? Or what kind of things do you want to do there? If you have specific things that you want to ask them and say, maybe we have a question that will ask you of what kind of food do you want? Sure, you can have a small question like that, but really make sure that what you're asking them is specific because the more specific that you are, the more that you'll get out of them. The vaguer you are, the vaguer you'll get responses from them. And so if you want specific, meaningful speeches, interactions, engagement from the students, make it so that you are asking them specific, meaningful, and direct questions. And in general, those are the tips that I would say are going to be the best ones to consider when you're celebrating your youth in general, creating any type of an appreciation for them, whether it's the capstones or whatever else you're trying to do. If it's a mid-year, holiday party, whether it's whatever it might be, that's going to be a really